welcome. I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is episode 10 of Books and Bingos. This week, we're recommending books releasing this month. So, we wanted to chat a little bit about our bingo board update. We'll be collecting the first round of these bingo boards at the end of June for prizes. So make sure you are putting all of your books in the little bingo board and you get that to us somehow by the end of June. You can email it to us if you need to. You can share it on social media. Just make sure you tag us. And then we'll be releasing a new board starting July 1st.
I can't wait. I'm so excited for the new board since I've pretty much filled up this one. So I'm ready to start fresh, new goals, new bingo.
Yes, and just a new one to look at. I feel like we've
Yeah.
had this one for quite a while now, so I'm excited for some new challenges for sure. All right, Amanda, what is your first pick?
My first pick is Four Eids and a Funeral by Faridah, Àbíké-Íyímídé, and Adiba Jaigirdar. And it's actually written because both of them are good friends, and I love that. So it is a YA realistic fiction book. However, it was marketed as romance, like it has the two characters on the cover, and it looks like it's, lots of romantic feelings and tropes and stuff like that. But the romance actually doesn't come into play until the very end of the book. Mostly it's about friendship and finding your way back to someone who once meant a lot to you. So if you are looking for a trope, though, it's childhood friends to lovers or enemies to lovers, because Saeed and Tiwa grow up together, but then he ends up leaving for boarding school, and he leaves his sister and their joint best friend Tiwa behind. So they start writing letters to each other, but then suddenly the letters from Saeed stop. And so Tiwa takes that very personally, and she believes that he's too good for her, and he thinks he's too good for her now. But when their favorite librarian passes away, they're both called back to share custody of her cat. But around the same time, their Islamic center burns down. It's not a hate crime, so it was just like an accident, but the mayor doesn't want to rebuild it. So the two join forces to try to stop apartment complexes from being built and kind of share how important their religious center is to them. This one comes out on June 4th. And the bingo squares that it would work for are young adult, new release, and realistic fiction. The content warnings would be death of a sibling, divorce, parental abandonment, death attending a funeral, animal death. It's just the goldfish, so hopefully that's not too triggering for you. Fire, racism, and grief.
All right, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
My first pick is a little out there, I feel like, even for me, and it's called Radiant: Embracing Your Power and Beauty at Midlife by Tess Whitehurst. This is an adult, new age, self improvement nonfiction book. And it was a really interesting look at entering this midlife era and like how you'll proceed forward, and a lot about how you look at yourself, how you interact with the things around you. And I will say there is a lot of the new age elements. So some people might refer to it as kind of like woo-wooey, but you can take as much of that as you want. There's some rituals you can do. You can skip those. I think the overall message, no matter where you fall on the scale of that new age science, is that you can, find yourself and be your real self by the time you're at mid-age. So I think there's a lot of great takeaways. I think you will really consider appreciating and feeling comfortable and taking care of yourself, especially now that you have made it, pretty much halfway through your life, and being able to reflect and see how far you've come. And my favorite chapter was on decluttering and creating vision boards. The idea for her decluttering, she says it's kind of like with the Marie Kondo, except instead of holding everything and deciding if it brings you joy, you hold everything and you decide if you want to be like responsible for this item, if it's contributing well to your life. And I think that is a really more refreshing way to look at it, because some things you have to have and they don't bring you joy, like you need underwear, but they may not bring you joy when you hold them in your hands. But this one is like, do I I want to take care of this. And I think this comes for, especially for like teachers, I feel like we're very likely to be hoarders because we need all the things for school. So I think it's nice to kind of get in that headspace and decide if it's going to add to your life or not. But all of that is tying into just really coming into your own in midlife. And I really enjoyed it. Again, there is some extra things like some spells and making different altars and things that you can do, but it really all comes back to really looking inward and reflecting on yourself. So I think everybody will find something they like in this. This is available June 4th, and it would work for nonfiction and new release.
I do not care for this midlife word that keeps going around to me. That I do not feel like I'm a midlife. You know, when people say midlife crisis, I'm like,
Yes.
no.
I agree, but you know, in all honesty, that's where we are. And it's after reading this, it kind of feels more like an honor than just being old. You know, we've accomplished so much so far, and I think it really does kind of have a good outlook on it. So
All
I will give you
right.
that. I had a hard time with that as well.
We need to come up with a different word that is not
Yes.
so triggering. That was midlife.
Second stage.
Yeah.
There you go.
My second pick is Storm, Dawn of a Goddess. This is by Tiffany D. Jackson. If you are a YA reader, you know Tiffany D. Jackson. She can write the phone book and I would read it. I believe she is one of the greatest writers of this generation, and her books always blow me away in different ways. I was a little hesitant to read this one because I'm not big into Marvel or superheroes myself, but I know that my students are. And so this is a YA Marvel origin story about Storm. So if you're familiar with the X-Men, and it's set in Egypt, which is really interesting because I follow Tiffany on social media, and I saw like last year, about a year and a half, something like that, that she was in Egypt. And I was like, of all the places that you could go, that's so interesting that she chose to go, like, you know, to a desert climate and all of that stuff. And then this book was announced and I was like, oh, she was doing research for that book. And I learned from James Ponti that authors can write off, like they can do a tax write-off, or if they travel and they write about what they like, it's for research for their book. And so I absolutely love that. In this story, Storm, she starts off when she's little, and she loses her parents pretty early on, and becomes what they call a street rat, which is stealing from tourists in the souk. So she starts at, once she hits like 16, 17 years old, she starts to feel like a tug, like somebody calling her home. She starts having dreams, and she starts having powers which are difficult to control. As you guys, if you are familiar with Storm, she can control the weather. And so some of that starts to get out of hand a little bit. She has like really long white hair that she keeps hidden in a hijab or a scarf, because it makes her unusual and it makes her stand out. And so she doesn't really want that, whatever is calling to her, she doesn't want anything to do with it. But some things we can't escape no matter how hard we try. So I believe that this ended in a good place, that it could be a potential series of all the X-Men. And I don't know if that would be from Tiffany or if there would be like different authors, but I do love a good origin story. That's always my favorite kind of superhero graphic novel to read, or fantasy novel, because I like to know where they came from before they became this big superhero. The bingo squares that this works for is young adult, fantasy, and new release. It comes out June 4th. The content warnings would be violence, blood, blindness, temporarily, parental death, grief, theft, and poverty.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be cool for all of the X-Men to have their own like origin story. I know the kids love all of the Marvel, all of it, all the DC. I'm
Yes.
not into the comics like you said either, but I know those would be huge. So that's really
Yeah.
exciting. My next pick is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This is an adult mystery thriller, and it's one of the best ones I've read from him so far. This starts with two boys who are sleeping in a backyard tent, but in the morning, only one of them wakes up in the tent. There's a slash in the tent, and they have no idea what happened to the boy. It's plagued the community and really the true crime community worldwide for 30 years. And at the beginning of the book, we find ourselves with the boy who survived, returning back to his old home. His parents have left. His life is kind of in shambles. He's going to live in this house for a little while until he gets back on his feet. And then some unusual things start happening. And there begins our dual timeline. So we follow our main character now at 40, moving back to the house, traveling forward through time, trying to figure out what happened again. And we also follow the original day the boy went missing. And it is very interesting. We see multiple points of view, and it's very gripping. Like, I kept wanting to read, I kept wanting to find out, who said what, who did this. I mean, you literally track all the characters in the community during that last day of the boy's life. And it's so fascinating. I absolutely did not see the ending coming. I did not guess who was involved. So I think it was really good. I think it had a really kind of sweet ending. I think this is going to be one that most people like from Riley Sager. A lot of trigger warnings: death of a child, suicide, drug and alcohol use by teenagers, death of a loved one, grief, dementia. And those are just the ones I can think off the top of my head. This comes out June 18th, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. That's how I listened to it. And this would work for mystery, thriller, new release, and obviously audiobook if you choose.
I want to do a quick plug because this book is actually available on Libro.fm this month. If you are a teacher or a librarian, you can sign up to get access to advanced listening copies of books through Libro.fm. And at the beginning of the month, they drop. And sometimes there's, 30, sometimes there's almost 100. So it's really cool. And as soon as I saw this one was available, I sent it to Rachel because I knew she was reading it this month for Books and Bingo. So I was excited.
Yes, and we were discussing before we started that we love audiobooks. They really help kind of speed up your reading. Sometimes it even makes it a more fulfilling experience to have the audio. So I was so thankful that I was able to access the audiobook as an early arc. So that was awesome. And those are our recommendations for the week. If you would like to share your recommendations or request a theme to be highlighted in a future show, reach out on social media at Books and Bingos or email us at booksandbingos@gmail.com. If you haven't yet, head over to tiny.cc/booksandbingos to request a Books and Bingos sticker. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week when we'll be recommending books with an LGBTQIA representation theme. Happy reading!